You're listening to the Ones Ready podcast, a team of Air Force Special Operators forged in combat with over 70 years of combined operational experience as well as a decade of selection instructor experience. If you're tired of settling and you want to do something you truly believe in, you're in the right place. Now here's your host, PJ team leader, jiu-jitsu lover, meme enthusiast, and dad joke aficionado, Aaron Love.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the team room. We got a special one. If you can't see, my good friend Greg Jackson came on to sit down in the team room and talk to us about all things like MMA and being an awesome dude and some other projects he's involved in. So we're going to get into that. You see Trent is out here too. So here's the deal. We want to say thanks to everybody that engages, likes, subscribes, goes to the YouTube, goes to the Instagram, checks out stuff. You guys are awesome. We really, really appreciate it. I'm getting better at Reels. No big deal. I'm getting pretty famous. I think I have like 100 followers. It's pretty good. I won't lie. I'm getting really, really good at it. Greg even said I look great. So go check out our.
Brought him on is to pump up your ego. I see where this is going.
He's right, man. That's exactly it. So we're gonna say thanks to Eberly Stock as well. Go over there. They have the best outdoor gear. I've got my Switchblade blade pack literally sitting right over there in the corner. It's my everyday carry. It's dope. It's rugged. It's amazing. Go to Eberly Stock. Put in Ones Ready at the checkout. Get yourself a sweet discount. Thank goodness, Greg, my friend. Thank you for coming on. Sure. For everybody that doesn't know about you, you are an Albuquerque staple. You belong here more than the Sandia Mountains. You've been here literally your entire life, man. Can you just break down your personal story of how you found yourself here in Albuquerque and how you got to where you are today?
These days, I'm feeling as old as the Sandia Mountains. So. They're young mountains. So anyway, I was actually born in Washington, D.C., and then I was raised here since I was about 6 months old for all intents and purposes. So, I was raised in the South Valley of Albuquerque, New Mexico, which is a place that has a very It's an underserved community for sure in the United States, and has a very machismo culture there that would really put fighting as kind of its most important thing. And so being one of the few white kids in the Hispanic community, I said, well, I better figure out how to do some of this fighting stuff pretty damn quick. So that was kind of the start of it. I never really wanted to be a coach or anything like that. I mean, once I got into being a coach, I wanted to be the best coach I could be, obviously. But I got kind of talked into the whole thing by my friends because we were doing so much actual kind of hands-on work, as you say. And my friends were saying, well, hey, how did you do this? Or how did you do that? And so I started teaching them, and I opened my first school when I was 17, which is a few years ago in 1992. And I've been basically running a martial arts school ever since.
That's crazy. And then when did you hook up with Mr. Winklejohn? When did that marriage happen? Because you guys have a long relationship.
We do. Pretty early on, actually, but he had his own school at that time. It was just Jackson's Mixed Martial Arts. And then right around 2007, I want to say, he was trying to retire. And I was like, no, you're not retiring, sir. You were becoming over full time. So then he came over kind of full time to work with the team at like about 2007, as I recall.
Okay. And then you guys have been together ever since.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he really helped me out a lot because again, you take kind of a raw street fighting kid and had really helped a lot of my striking, refined a lot of my striking, taught me how to set things up. Street fighting will make you lazy because you're fighting people that aren't as prepared as you are most of the time. You're not going to get to the next level there, right? You've got to get kind of a little bit more, have protocols and ideas and these kind of things that are a little more conducive to fighting at a high level. And so he really was one of the first people that helped me get to that next level.
Nice. Yeah. And there's levels. There's levels to everything. There's levels to this fight game. There's levels to soft. There's levels to all this stuff. When did you guys move into the big building downtown?
I think that was 5 years ago we moved there. It's a pretty large building, and it's been really great. It's been a great journey. One of those things where I didn't know that I would end up here at all. I'm just very lucky that I did. Seriously, just lucked out that I got into MMA very, very early on, and that people still want to come and train with a guy as old as the Sandia Mountains.
So one of the things that we always talk about on this show, and we talk to our audience is mostly people I think that want to get into the soft community. And we talk about mental toughness a lot and how important it is. And I think there's a lot of crossover between fighting and our community. And so what are some of those barriers, the mental toughness barriers that you have to get your fighters across? Or is there anything in particular that comes up over and over again?
Yeah, I mean, definitely both in soft and in MMA world. I think that the making sure that you're in line with the process, I think is probably the most important thing. And so there's things that will constantly try to pull you out of the process: fear, pain, indecision, all of these things. So basically, making sure that you're strong enough to deal with whatever psychological adversity is coming your way to maintain that kind of flow state. And you don't need to be like, I'm in the zone all the time. Obviously, that you don't get that privilege all the time, but being able to say, okay, well, this is putting me in pain or extreme fatigue, or is wearing me down, and you start having those internal conversations with yourself that seem like logic, but actually are not. Is the opposite of logic. Seems super sound at the time, though, right? You're like, oh yeah, maybe if I could just, if I just stop this, then all the pain stops.
No, you know what? I'm right. If I just quit, I wouldn't have to do this anymore.
That's right. Not knowing, right, that the pain of quitting is way worse than anything you're going to get. So I think that those things, that warrior mentality is common. Now, obviously, MMA is not nearly as dangerous as working in the soft community at all. But there are still things that you have to deal with as far as fear, pressure, especially judgment. Judgment's a big one in MMA because the soft community isn't quite as broadcast. Not saying they aren't, but your judgment comes from your peers more than it comes from millions of fans, right? But it's still kind of the same idea. So I think that there are very, very important commonalities there that do cross over. And if you're looking to get into the soft community, in my opinion, obviously great decision making is number one, but you've got to be pretty mentally tough.
I couldn't even imagine like if everything that I did was filmed, and then having 12-year-old guys jump up on the internet and be like, this dude is an idiot. He doesn't know what he's doing. And he's weak. like, I don't know.
Nice tack reload, bro.
Yeah. Drive me nuts.
Well, and JT and Dizzy talked about it when he came on Free Range American the other day. Dizzy Disaster really put it out there. He's like, dudes with no resumes are out there critiquing, like, oh, look at that lazy left hand. Be like, bro, have you ever been hit by a hook in your life? Like, what are you talking about?
No.
Well, go ahead. Sorry.
No, I was just going to keep going. I'll just go down that caveat, that rabbit hole all day long.
Did you just say I'll caveat that rabbit hole? That does not sound appropriate.
I say as many words that I think are going to tick you off as possible.
Okay.
You don't even know what caveat means, Trent. So this is where my critique comes from. It's from Aaron 100% of the time.
That's right. Well, I mean, it is. The big difference, obviously, is that MMA is entertainment, and what the soft community does is for something much greater than that. But yeah, you do find these. I think, in my opinion, and what do I know about anything? But you get a lot of the tactical nerds as well that are probably trying to tell you guys that have knocked on a few doors in your day what's going on. So some of that's still the same. It still crosses over pretty well.
That's crazy. So in my mind. When we talk about fight camp or the training pipeline or train up, the way that we do business, there's, like I said, there's a lot of similarities. So what are some of the tools that you use to keep your guys motivated and focused going through fight camp? Because I think if you follow the sport at all, it's a grind and it's hard, and I think some of the fighters are pretty honest about I did not want to do this for 3 months or whatever it was. And it's worse than the fight. So what are some of the tools that you bring to bear?
Well, I mean, a lot of it has to do with the obviously the individual having the fire in the first place. But listen, for me, that's a great way to figure out if the job is for you, really, because fighting is a job, it's all a job. So if the job is for you, then while you're going to have problems being motivated, you've got another layer underneath you that will keep you motivated. If you don't have that right out of the bat, right out of the go, then it really isn't the job for you. I would say something else. Listen, the Air Force has a lot of cool stuff you could maybe do, fly in airplanes and things of that nature. I've heard, it's pretty cool. So my point is that you've got to come with something, right? You've got to come with some kind of determination. Now, on top of that, as you're going through, you have to remind yourself why you're doing it, in my opinion. The reason why is a big deal, and it's what you can anchor your mind to. So fighters a lot of times will do it because they want to improve their situation, or they want to, show everybody something, right? I want them to show that I'm the best. In soft, you can do the same thing, right? You have to have a reason why. Why are you doing this? And that why needs to be pretty distinct early on. You can't. I've seen people figure it out kind of halfway through, like, oh, this is why I'm doing it. Or they can change their mind, and that's handy as well. But a lot of times, if you don't have something to mentally anchor yourself on when you're just cooked and there's people yelling at you and making you do things that you don't really want to do, it's nice to kind of sit back for half a second and go, I'm doing this because of this. And that, at least for me, that helps out a lot. And then the second part of that is, I like the term professional a lot. So if you're a professional, then it is your job to put up with this suffering like that. And I remind my fighters of that all the time. Like, this is your job. Like, some people go and they type on computers, or as we stated earlier, you fly around airplanes or whatever your job is. But your job basically is to suffer. Like, that's your job. You have to be the best at suffering so that when your opponents are suffering and you're suffering, you're better at your job than they are at theirs. So that's a big thing for me too. That kind of anchor motivation, like why, and knowing the whys before you get in there is a big deal. And then also the calming yourself down and saying, you know what, this is what professionals do. They get yelled at in the rain while they carry a log around or whatever silliness in the fight game we have as well.
A lot of apparatus to choose from. And I think we just found, like, I don't know, the term just professional suffering. I don't know. That hit me. That's pretty awesome. So for a noob like myself, when we get this question sometimes, how to start from zero. So if I wanted to start into the fight game, like, I don't even know which hand to throw. Where do people even start at to become fighters? Where would I go first?
Well, you have to ask yourself, the most important question is, can you deal with disappointment? Because that fighting, where it has a kind of an illusion over a lot of people, is that it's Rocky, right? Like, you go out there and then you do a montage and then all of a sudden you're on top of the world. The fight game is nothing but dealing with disappointment. And I don't mean losing. I mean that you have a fight scheduled, everything is all set up, and then the guy didn't make weight and won't fight you. And then you can't find a fight for a year and a half. And then, like, that's what fighting is. That's at the lowest level. That's all it is just disappointment after bitter disappointment. So if you're cool with that, man, fighting's for you. That would be the first thing I would say. Then secondly, there's so many mixed martial arts schools now that you can, they're like leaves on a giant tree. So you can find a ton of them. And any one of them at the beginning level is pretty much, unless it's absolutely ridiculous and they're teaching you ninja stuff from the 80s, you should be fine just as a baseline. And then you can kind of, as you research it, you can figure it out. I would ask around. I would ask in your community, hey, is this a good school? Is this a bad school? Do they have any fighters? Get to know the trainers a little bit, see if it's a personality that'll click. But really, it's not even about getting your technique down. It's, can you deal with, even if you're a hobby fighter, like you just want to do some amateur fights or whatever, can you deal with just having all your hopes and all of this intense process going on, and then it's all of a sudden done, and then you don't do it again for 8 months, and then it's going to be said again, okay, and then you get one fight and, oh man, you win, and it's the greatest thing ever, and then you don't fight for a year because this falls through, that falls through. Really, it's about being able, if you're okay doing that and training and getting better during that time, you're going to have a great career as a fighter. But if not, it gets, I have plenty of fighters that honestly, it's broken. Like, they've been very talented, but they're just not willing to pay that price of constantly for the first, 2.5, 3 years. It's just nothing but a pain in the butt.
Well, and it's got to be so much luck too. Having everybody make weight, having all those things line up, having the promotions actually fall in line. Like, there has to be, and it has to suck for you as a coach too, to see a fighter that you're like, Jesus, if he would just get a break, if he would just let this line up. Like,
yeah, there is a lot of that, and it happens a lot. I think the most important thing as a coach and a fighter as well, in those early years, is just, again, giving yourself, and I'm going to sound like a broken record here, but if you're all right with the process, because really it's only 15 minutes, it's hurry up and wait, like the soft game, like all the games, right? It's like you get in position and nothing happens. And then you go and they're knocking on door, nothing. And then all of a sudden everything happens. Yeah. But it's only 15, 20 minutes and 25 minutes in the fight game. And, you're not going to be in a firefight that's probably more than a week long. Probably messed up something really bad if you're in that kind of a situation.
Right.
So, it's a small amount of time that everything matters in. And that's very addicting, and it should be addicting. But if you give yourself to the process and just treat that as another branch of your training and improvement, that's how you usually can ride that stuff out, at least in my experience.
Got it. Well, that's awesome. And that brings us to kind of like how we met. So it was a couple of years ago. For people out there that don't understand or aren't tracking it, every single squadron usually has what they call an honorary commander an honorary commander. So it's somebody that you look out in the community and you're like, man, this guy upholds our ethos. This guy upholds our morals and the things that we want. And we connect with them, and you ask them to be your honorary commander. Sometimes it's a throwaway position. For us at the Schoolhouse, it was definitely not a throwaway position. This was one of those things where, I'm happy. I'll throw BC's operator initials out there because it was his idea. It was not mine, but I was just glad to kind of be there. But we approached you in it was probably like 2015. 2015 to be the honorary commander of the PJ Crow Schoolhouse, and you've been the honorary commander since then. Can you kind of like walk us through what that like? Because I'm sure you get like crazy community requests all the time where they're like, "Oh, Greg Jackson," because you are a local celebrity.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, not much of a celebrity, thankfully. I think that because of the things that we have in common in the fighting world and in the soft world, it was an easy fit for me. Plus, I'm always looking for, like, my job has no social value. Like, I have no relevance at all. I hold a bucket and I scream at people to punch other people. So, like, if you're going to break down who's giving back to their community, this is not the guy. Right. So it is a way to, you guys are on the line, sacrificing everything, including your lives, so that my kids can, have a choir practice, or, I can enjoy my country. That's just having that freedom is a huge deal. So anything that pretty much the military will ask, I will do. Because again, I'm like, I'm not exactly I haven't given my life in public service. I'll put it that way. So this was a chance for me to help out a little bit. And even if it's just a little bit, I'll take it. So that was my motivation there.
Nice. Well, then you and I had many a cold morning of showing up and doing combatives with the students. And some of the students were lucky enough to get just like straight up world-class instruction. And me too. I learned a lot from those as well. But
you were the world-class instructor.
Totally false. So you got to be introduced to kind of like a whole different like group of people. So you're so used to being around, fighter athletes and the fighters that you had. And then all of a sudden, you're seeing, these guys that are at the end of a 2-year pipeline and they're there. What differences did you notice in those two kind of groups of people,
Well, there is actually, I was lucky enough to be exposed previously by like Greg Thompson, who runs the SOCP program and stuff, working with some other SF groups as well. Mm-hmm. But I will tell you that there was the biggest, my fighters are going to hate me for saying this, but the biggest difference was usually an education level. Like, not always, but when you guys are doing the PJ stuff, it's usually, so in other words, when your vetting process, your vetting process usually isn't, well, can you fight really well? Right. Like you have to hold a bank account, whatever it is.
You have to hold it.
Right. Whatever. No,
so you know how to calculate your taxes.
No, really. No, like not even that, but like, so some of my fighters are very, very smart people, but some of them are just like, it's not their fault. No one's ever taught them how to, I don't know how to do a bank account. Like, I don't know how to treat people. I don't know, like a lot of them have come from very, hard circumstances, but they didn't have the military saying, okay, these are the things that you need to get up and make your bed. You know what I mean? Like you don't have that. So that was one of the main differences. The core is the same. Like they still had they wanted to be go-getters. They wanted to fight, so to speak. But the biggest difference is what the military gives you is that the ability to kind of be a little bit more of a complete person. Whereas fighters a lot of times don't have that. It's not, and again, it's nothing against them. It's not that they're bad people. It's just they haven't had the same opportunities with somebody yelling at them. A lot of them come from really rough circumstances, and they're just trying to fight their way out of it. So you come to the table then with a little bit different parameters, if that makes sense.
Sure.
So that was one of the things I noticed. But as far as the core, same guys are trying hard and warriors, and everything that I like about people.
Absolutely. Kind of that grit and that willingness to not quit. And I saw a lot of those similarities too, because I've been lucky enough to meet, a couple fighters. We had Alistair Overeem come in and his fight camp and his team come in and do some stuff. And obviously, I've run across Holly and Jody Escobel and some of the other fighters that are running around. So I noticed a lot of those similarities as well, those personality traits. And I think a lot of our listeners are going to really resonate with like they're fighting to change their lives too. Like right. we know PJs and SR guys and controllers that have literally lived in cars and been homeless, and they've just been like, this is it. This is my shot. Like I've got to go. And that typically drives them, really, really hard to achieve those things. So moving on, like one of my favorite things about being an instructor was going to the graduations. As the honorary commander, do you remember your first graduation to where you were like, okay, this is a thing now?
Yeah, it was really cool. Like, so many years, and you guys as PJs, you have to have so many skill sets. Holy cow! It is impressive the amount of things that you guys need to know. And so just to watch all the, year after year of training and getting beaten down, and then just to see that elation in that graduation ceremony. And I will say the guys are, the boys and those of you guys who have graduated PJs, you guys are all kind of cool, calm, and collected up there. Somebody will say something funny once in a while. But for me, it's really the families that I love. In the background, the families will be hooting and hollering, and they're just so proud of them. And so hearing that pride, so my back will be to the audience, and I'll be facing obviously the graduates, and you can feel like a wave of pride just behind you. And in a sense, for me, it was almost allegory for the pride of the country. You know what I mean? Like, you have this, we are proud to have you guys represent us. And so when you feel that power, it gives me goosebumps now. When you feel that power behind you and then focused up on those graduates, I think that's an incredibly powerful experience for me. Now, and of course, as a PJ, and you're just out of just training after training after training, and now you got to graduate. So I'm calm, cool, and collected. They're up there, and maybe they're feeling it, but they're keeping it in because they've been dealing with fear and all this stuff for so long that I think it's a lot hard to, and it's not appropriate for them to release it and running around, throwing their berets out, going, "On the man!" Like, probably not the place.
Well, I did, but I'm a terrible person. I mean, I couldn't believe it. I was like, man, not only did I graduate, but you feel that. That's a great way to describe it, because you can feel when I was on that stage, when I was graduating from the apprentice course, and I was like, holy cow, this is the end of a 2-year. For me, it was longer because I tried once, and I included that whole 5-year process for me. But you could really feel that. That pride or that wave, and sitting up there too, you're trying to, like, you're still a student, so you're not trying to act up and get in trouble. But man, I was pumped. I was pumped about that.
I think that's really cool. And I think that's something that if you haven't experienced it, you can describe it to people, but they'll never really get it, right? It's something that sets you apart because you went through this journey. Other people aren't in that warrior's journey with you, except that your guys around you. And I think that that's a very powerful thing. And I think it's very necessary for a lot of young guys. So if you can swim and you can do any kind of, like, hey, is he sick? Yeah, maybe I should give him this medicine. Then go be a pararescueman, because you're good to go. Jumping out of airplanes is easy. The ground is right there. Swimming for me is much harder than jumping out of airplanes. Trust me, get good at the swimming.
It depends on who you're jumping with, though. So
yeah, that's a good point.
I was jumping by myself, so I was in real trouble.
No, those are the best jumps. If you jump by yourself, there's no sky trash out there to run into you. It's glorious.
Yeah.
But I think some of one of the things you said about the families, I think some of that is just that release of stress. It's like watching a fighter in the cage as their coach or their family member. They've been following these guys for 2.5 years and going along with all their struggles. And the family knows that there's a very real possibility that these guys are not going to make it. They're not going to fulfill their dreams. And so I think that it all culminates at that graduation moment. It's just, I think they're just relieved as much as the students are, because, if you care about someone, they're going through all this suffering and you don't want them to fail. But the reality is, there were 9 out of 10 guys that didn't make it to that stage. So it's pretty special. But
I mean, that's a crazy attrition rate that you guys have. Crazy.
Yeah. Well, speaking of attrition rates, in Hollywood, I hear it's really hard to make it. But I've also heard that you've been involved in a lot of those projects. Dude, my segues are the worst.
Trent, you are my hero now. That was the most important pivot I've ever. That was pretty good. That's a tactical pivot. Tactical pivot.
I couldn't think of a good way to segue. I was like,
Trent, I love it.
How do we start talking about Hollywood movies?
Trent segues like a flashbang.
No way, dude. Trent, I'm meeting you. You're my hero, Trent. That's awesome. That is so good. Yeah. So Hollywood is I think it's a very hard place if you are an actor. Again, the attrition rate there. The great thing about being somebody as ugly and dumb as I am is that I get to go and do fun parts of it. but I don't have to make a living at it. So there's not a lot of pressure on for me. I've tried every job that I could do just to see what it was like. So I did a cameo on a TV show. I was a stuntman, just randomly tried out being a stuntman just to see how that was. You know what I mean? And because if you know people, they're like, "Hey, you want to be a stuntman?" I'm like, "Sure."
You want to get set on fire? I mean,
right. Yeah. So I've helped with the writing, fight choreography. So it's been a real fun kind of journey just to see on the other side of entertainment, what it's about. What are the similarities? I'm a guy that's always looking for, like, if I listen to music, I'm listening for rhythms and structures that maybe help me in combat. Same thing with like directors. Like when I talk to directors, I like to say, well, how do you get people to focus in on these key points? Then I take that as a fighter and say, okay, or as a coach and say, okay, how can I get my fighters to distract the guy over here and hit him over there? You know what I mean? Like, so I'm always looking for these commonalities, which is why I do it. The stuntman I just did to see what it was like, but all the rest of the stuff that I do, I'm always looking at structure and that kind of enlightenment, because I think in order to, like one of your famous people and one of my heroes, Boyd, you want to be able to go outside of your art, these unreachable truths, right? Like it's a little bit like Gerdell said, right? Like you want to get these truths that are outside of the system that you have to find more truths. So I'm constantly trying to look out. And that's actually what got me into working with the soft community is I was trying to figure out what are these underlying strategical principles that you use if you're clearing a room, if you are assaulting an airfield, and how do those principles that you use there, how do those translate into one-on-one combat in a cage? And so that was actually the beginning of me working with the combative stuff and going to some schools and doing that kind of thing, was just that interest in that. Like, what I need to be able to say, okay, if you post on a door and your team riffs around you, that's like isolating a Kimura and moving your hips around it to turn for an armbar. And once you see those similarities, then you can say, okay, I'm beginning to understand that this is a strategical point that needs to be studied. And then you need to be thinking about that over your technique when you go into combat. Right. How was that for a segue?
that was amazing. I think my next question, and I have to ask this, is are movies ruined for you? Like, you know a lot about mixed martial arts. And I know in the military, we try to watch these movies. And, I'm sitting down with my wife and I'm watching a military movie and she's starting to get into it. And I have to control myself instead of being like, that's not real. This is stupid. Why would you do that?
Actually, you would never clear that corner like that, friend.
Yeah. So I think here's my problem. I actually really like dance fighting. It's harder for me when they try to make it look realistic. So like I would have an easier time. Like when I watched the Hidden Dragon, Crouching Tiger. You know what I mean? That thing. Like I loved it because it's dance fighting, and I love dance fighting, right? Like there's music and they're flowing, and like a little hit like this makes them go flying. So I can do suspension of disbelief pretty well. And the same thing if you're doing like a war movie. I think, you know what I mean? Like I've never been in a war. I have not stormed the beaches of Normandy, so I wouldn't know how realistic Saving Private Ryan was. I don't think anybody here has, but I can do suspension of disbelief a little bit there. It's when you like really, really try to make it realistic that, again, I can be all right with it, but I'm always like, that's your biggest problem with the movie? Like, John Wick kills 43 dudes and doesn't get shot at all. Like, if you play Sims, just play Sims for 5 minutes with 3 dudes and see how many sim rounds you get before you can take them all out one at a time dancing, right? Like, so for me, like even the tactics are like, okay, whatever. I'll tell you what has ruined for me is TV. Like because I've done so many of these writing, helping out with the writers, like I can't watch my suspension of disbelief on television for whatever reason is gone. Like I cannot watch TV. It's hilarious. Like I cannot watch it. Like I'll watch it for a while and then I'm like, I'm just thinking about the plot the whole time. Anyway, like, and I'm a terrible writer. That's the sad part of it. Imagine if I was a really good writer and could help out, but
you could actually provide like
right, yeah, exactly. But I don't know what I'm talking about. But I do know that it's ruined it for me. Like I can see the writers' room and all of them going, "What if we'd made the Mandalorian go left here, and then we'll do? Oh, that's a good idea." You know what I mean? Like. It has ruined that for me. But with movies, I'm okay with the suspension of disbelief. I like, when Thor gets his hammer out and the music goes on and get him, Thor. I can do that.
Oh yeah,
I can do that.
No, I think I've gotten better as I got old. Like I think we Aaron and I have talked about that weird like staff sergeant time in your career where you take things very seriously and think you know everything. Right. And I think I've grown out of that. I just wanted to bring that up. So do you have anything big in the works though that you want to talk about on that side of the fence?
Ooh, let's see. Not really. Well, I'm like I'm basically a vulture of that world, right? If I see carrion on the ground, I'll dive in. Like somebody will be like, "Hey, come eat over here." So I don't really I don't really pursue. My friends that work in that industry will come and say, "Hey, will you help me do this?" Like for that Range 19, which was Tim Kennedy and all those guys basically did that movie, and it was a great movie. And Randy Couture and all these Medal of Honor winners in there, and say it was hilarious. But anyway, they were like, "Hey, our fight choreographer dropped out. Can you come in 3 days and do every fight scene in this movie?"
Yeah.
So I was like, okay.
Yeah.
So I got on a plane and basically didn't sleep for a couple of days. And the highlight of that trip though was Danny Trejo. I got to do a fight scene for him, and that was pretty cool because that dude's like a legend, right? Yeah, how cool is that? And mind you, they weren't good fight scenes. You can watch the movie, but it was super fun to do. So it's always things like that where you're like, oh, so-and-so has a project. Do you want to come and help them out? And I'm sure just for the experience of it, I'll say, sure, I'd love to do that. So it's always in that way where somebody says, okay, here's another MMA movie or here's another MMA show. But I was really lucky. I got to do a lot on the Warrior movie. I got to do really a lot on the Kingdom TV show. So I just luck, man, just the right place at the right time. And so I realized what a jerk I sound like saying that because there's actual real actors that are like, "Oh, must be nice." And that actually ran into it. I was doing a cameo as myself because I'm not an actor. Like I played
yourself.
I played myself and didn't do it well.
I was going to say like you're like Charlie Chaplin when he plays third in a Charlie Chaplin lookalike contest.
Exactly. Anyway,
you were the third choice for Greg Jackson.
And they gave me a script. I'm like, I'm not going to remember this. Like I'm a terrible actor. So I'm like, I'll just say what I would say in this situation, right? Like I'm like remembering lines, and I don't like the attention of the camera. I'm even doing podcasts. I'm kind of uncomfortable. I just don't like the attention. So this poor guy next to me was like, he had no idea about MMA or anything. He was just like an extra in the show. And he was telling me that he had moved. He was an older guy, probably late 50s, maybe early 60s. He had moved from New Jersey, I think, to California to make it in the biz, and was like, well, how did you get a speaking role in this? Because he's like just standing, you have to wait there, and then they say action and you go do it, and then you do it again and you do it again and you do it again. And I was like, I really didn't try out for it. They just asked me to do it. And this dude he got mad at me he was like, "What? You didn't audition? What?" Like he was furious with me. And I felt so terrible. I'm like, "No, dude, it's like, I'm a coach in this sport. And so it's like a cameo." And he was so mad that my words weren't making sense to him. The whole time he was just giving me the,
like, no, that character over there is based on me. Like,
right. Yeah.
You don't want to be like, I'm a somebody. Like,
no, well, that, and just like that guy's working hard. So I apologize to all the actors out there that are trying to work hard. It's not, you do a job I could not do. I am not an actor. I do not like being in front of the camera. I would be a terrible thespian. I wouldn't be able to enunciate to the back row. Yeah, it would be bad.
Jeez, you ready for another terrible segue?
Yeah, let's do it.
Like, just like Danny Trejo and being surrounded by all those amazing like Hollywood types, what's it like being in the gym every day surrounded by some of the best fighters in the world?
Oh, you're the worst. The worst.
I am nailing this.
Trent, you need to be a writer. That's all I can say. That is so good. Now listen, the thing about that is that you have to separate, and I get this question a lot. I have to separate myself as a fan. So as a fan, you would say, okay, all these guys and but like, it's my job to tell them what to do. So even though I'm a fan in my heart, like I love watching them do what they do, they're just normal. Like that's my coworkers. Right. Again, think about all the amazing dudes you guys know. And, you'd be like, man, what is it like? That guy had 6 saves and got shot. Like, and you're like, yeah, he's a good dude. I went through the pipeline with him.
Yeah, he threw up at my house one time.
Right, exactly.
He woke up with a traffic cone on his head when we were young, and he came over.
So inside your heart, you can be like, that's my boy. You know what I mean? You're so proud of him for doing all that stuff, and you can be, but you're not going to go, hey, can I get your autograph, please, sir? And it'd be like, because it would make him feel weird too. So that's the short version of that. The long version of that is I still don't know why I'm there. Like I am a skinny white kid from the South Valley. I have no idea why anybody would want to work with me. I'm very glad for the last 30 years they have. I'm serious as a heart attack. I'm not false humility. Like I'm just lucky to be there. Really. I'm just dumb, crazy luck that I get to be there and do. I get to do what I love. I can work as much or as little as I want. I mean, I don't understand how I got so lucky. I don't understand. I'm in a place where I'm like, why me? Why there's so much better? But I'll take it. That's for sure.
Well, I have to say, as a fan, and I'm not just an MMA fan, but I've been, I've seen you a number of times, and I'm fairly familiar with a lot of your work. I think one of the things that really struck me about you, and especially when I was an instructor, is it seems like you really get to know your fighters. And you have different approaches for all your different fighters. Like the way that you corner, like Donald Cerrone, is different than some of the other fighters. You know what I mean? And the way that you're able to get into their heads and get the most out of your fighters and get them to stick to the game plan is something that is unique. And especially when you first started doing all of this stuff, this wasn't normal across the board. And so I think watching what you were doing as a military instructor on the other side, it really helped me out in a lot of ways to figure out like, hey, what's the process to get these people to do what I want them to do? It's like, oh, like look at Greg Jackson. Like he seems like he knows all his fighters. He has different approaches for all of them. And then they're winning, their success record is ridiculously high coming out of Albuquerque. And so that's, I mean, you say you don't belong there, but I think, you cracked a certain code and it works for you and you are who you are. And that's why, everybody wants to come out to Albuquerque to train with you. That's my 2 cents on that.
I thought it was because I was really good looking, Trent.
You are really good looking.
Okay,
don't
good.
you let him hype you up.
You're right. It's good looks. It's good
Look,
looks.
I don't put your calendar on the wall behind me for the podcast, but it's there. Don't worry about it.
Good. No, I mean, it's very nice of you to say. And I've been very lucky. I really have. And I really care about my job. I care about my guys and gals. I've been lucky, and I'm also super passionate. I'm a very passionate person. So it's helped out.
Okay. So who's the hardest to coach?
Who is the hardest to coach? There's this guy, Aaron. Oh my God. He's
terrible and never takes input. He's not good at anything. I'll tell you what that's like. The other one too. It's like,
no, when they're hard to coach, it's usually on me because I feel like I haven't figured out, speaking of cracking the code, like I haven't figured it out, and I don't click with everybody. There's fighters that like to be more screamed at and yelled at, and that's just not my vibe. So I don't click with everybody. But when it's somebody's hard to coach, it's usually because I haven't understood how to coach them yet, at least at that high level. Now, that is not true when some people are just not coordinated, or they have a lifetime of not being coordinated. But I don't deal with that very much because I pretty much only deal with pretty good fighters these days. But I will say that being hard to coach isn't his problem or her problem. It's my problem. And so I try to figure out completely different ways to go, here's maybe I'm not approaching this the right way. Maybe I need to go take them in the mountains and break them down a little bit more so they're listening a little better, whatever the solution may be. But I actually really enjoy it when they're hard to coach because this makes it a challenge and I've got to figure out the problem.
Yeah. And I felt the same way as an instructor and as a leader, as a flight chief, as whatever it is, position that I'm supposed to do. I'm like, why can this guy not figure it out? And as I've gotten older, it's because I'm not doing it the right way, because I need to change my leadership style.
Right.
I can't yell at there are people that I cannot yell at. Like my daughter, I figured that out early on. I cannot raise my voice at my daughter. I just have to explain to my daughter what's going on. And she'll be like, okay. sometimes there is a place for yelling and being super directive and getting into somebody's chili. But a lot of times, like, especially with Holly, I know you worked a lot with, like, she wanted to be first. She wanted that blue ribbon. She wanted those things. So in the times of stress, and you could see it when you were cornering Holly, you just, hey, take a breath. You're good. Blue ribbon. We're there. We're going to keep pressing with this. I always thought that was a good approach to try to really get into somebody, to get them to perform. Right.
Well, it's about, that is the cracking so my job basically is I have to figure out what is a fighter afraid of, and what do they do when they're afraid, right? And it's obviously very similar to what you guys do. So, sometimes the fighter is gassing out. They're afraid of that. Sometimes it's being on their back too long, whatever it is. It's because that's what I do when I break down opponents. When I look at, okay, who we're going to fight, I have to see, well, where are they weak mentally? Mm-hmm. Where can we push them so that we can win? I call it their teddy bear. It's the thing that they hold on to and, like,
sure. Yep.
The world's crawling around me. Where's my teddy bear?
Right. They get scared and somebody tries to pull a guard or
whatever it is. Right. Yeah. So identifying that in your fighter as well, you can see the negative and the positive. And so I think that is one of my few talents, is being able to read people in a way where I can figure out what they're afraid of, and then also how to either get them over that fear or help them along that journey of dealing with that. Well,
and you're almost like reverse engineering their why. Like, right. You're almost trying to figure out what really drives them, and how can I get them to focus on that in the moment.
That's very insightful. It's exactly it.
Oh, that was nice of you.
I think some of that physical pain too, like you said, we use the same tools, like I can make all that, the background, like the 800 voices in their head, with enough pain, I can make those disappear, and then it's just you and me having a conversation.
Yeah. Me saying this sucks, and you saying, all right.
Yeah. I can make the background noise go away very, very quickly. Yeah. So I'm going to use a Trent flashbang transition here. So we covered all the fight stuff. I want to start talking about some other projects that you're involved in. And the number one, the big one for me that I love, I've had a chance to train, with you guys and with the organization a time or two before, is the Deliver Fund. Mm-hmm. Can you talk about the Deliver Fund a little bit and what you guys are getting after?
Well, Deliver Fund is a great organization founded by Nick McKinley, who was in the soft community for years. He was actually a PJ himself.
Former J. Yep.
Yeah, before he went to the agency. He really, when he was downrange, he saw, like a lot of you guys do, a lot of kind of human trafficking stuff. And when he came back to the United States, he's like, well, I'd like to continue my service, but to do that in a way wherein I can stop this major problem, basically slavery. And then he educated himself and found out that in the United States, it's quite a large problem. And then being the brilliant guy that he is, he went about to fixing it. So I was one of the founding board members on that. Basically they're hunting down human traffickers. So you guys can go and give to their charity. It's a not-for-profit. But we're not like, again, it's not Jason Bourne. You're not, right. There's not 8 dudes kicking down a door, which I get asked all the time. Hey, next time you guys go kick down a door and shoot some traffickers, I'm in. I'm like, okay.
That's not it, guy.
Yeah. We're in the United States. This is not downrange. We are here.
Right.
So what they do is on the intel side, they basically put these packages together and then work in conjunction with the police to hit package is a strong word again, but you want to put these packages together that the police then can execute, and within the confines of the law, there's nothing they do that's illegal, or we wouldn't be around very long.
Right.
And then the second part of it is they train police officers how to identify human trafficking victims, how to deal with them, victim services stuff. So they're kind of a one-stop shop for all of that. And it's been great to be involved with them. I was super proud that I could give back to something and help out. So they have done a great job, I think. And you can look up their website, the Deliver Fund website, and they'll give you all the details of the amazing things that they do, because it's constantly getting better and better.
Yeah.
But they made it hard for human traffickers to be human traffickers. I'll put it that way. Because up until these guys, and there's some other organizations out there too, it's not like these guys are the only guys in town, but human trafficking was not that, you get away with it. The risk for a war dynamic, they don't care.
And it was crazy too. I never realized before we got in the military, but in Trent, like, call me if I'm wrong, but our entire career, haven't we had to learn about human trafficking? And there was, until recently, we were always like, why am I taking this CBT? Why am I taking this training? Like, is this that big of a deal? Well, then you deploy sometimes, and then you see some things that really raise your eyebrows. Then you get home and you start to see the same things. You're like, not to the same scale. And you're like, hold on, man, like this might be a for real problem. And I'm so proud of Nick and the Deliver Fund dudes for stepping up. And, you being involved in that was awesome too. What was it like when they approached you? Were your eyes just like widened to it?
So, yeah, I mean, I wasn't aware of it. And I grew up in what would be considered the hood, but you're just not aware of the dynamics and the organizational process that a lot of these human traffickers possess. So it was a super education for me. And then I always say yes, because that's the same reason I got into coaching, is I have a terrible time saying no to my friends. Like if you guys ask me to do something, I'm like, okay,
fine, I guess.
Right, let's go. Yeah, I never wanted to be that guy. So that it was easy. And plus, I got to learn a lot of stuff too. I got to go through their courses and do a lot of that stuff. So it was really educational for me. I love to learn. I think my defining quality would be curiosity. I'm constantly curious about different stuff. So anytime that's satiated, I'm very happy.
Nice. Well, and then you move on from Deliver Fund, and I'm going to break the news here on the podcast to everybody. Jackson Wink 2024 presidential ticket. It's coming up.
That's right.
Sweet. I know. Yeah. Obviously a joke there, but you have started to get into that political realm. You're not running for office, or are you?
We don't know yet, but I will be definitely running down the road. So and again, for me, it's just learning and listening. What I've been doing on the political side is really trying to get people's experiences. Because I find a lot of it, people start talking to me about politics. They actually don't talk to me about their experiences. They talk to me about what they heard on Fox or CNN or the internet, but they don't tell me a lot about what they have gone through. So I usually sit through
those darn libs, those darn Democrats, those darn everybody.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So I usually, because that's not what you think. That's what your sports team thinks, right? That's what the collective thinks, which is fine. But so then I say, well, how have you had to deal with homeless people? Like, what does that entail? Like, do you go to businesses? Do you feel sorry for them? Are they harassed? You know what I mean? Like, so those are the questions. How do you deal with the police? How do you deal? What do you feel? Do you feel like you're making enough money from your job? Like, these are the kind of things that I like to ask people. Is your neighborhood safe? Why do you think it is or isn't? Like, these are the things because it's a very immediate deal for me. And I want to know what people really think themselves. What are your experiences and what are your thoughts? Because I can go on the internet and see what your other thoughts are. And there's nothing unique about that. But your own experience is almost always unique. You'll see commonalities in there, but you have dealt with things that you might not even understand, or political issues. And so if you ask the right questions and then just listen to what they're saying, I think that you get educated. And so right now I'm in the process of trying to educate myself to that, at least in my local community, and see, what are we dealing with here? How are people feeling, and what are they really experiencing on kind of on the boots on the ground level? And that has been super fun. Like, it's been really, it's been super educational, especially because it challenges your own view. So I was raised in the South Valley of Albuquerque, New Mexico. My neighborhood was pretty rough and tumble. We had the South Valley in Albuquerque, New Mexico is a very interesting place because you have the best people in the world living immediately next door to the worst
possible scenario. Exactly. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So it's a weird situation, and there's not a lot of, this is the bad neighborhood, this is the good neighborhood. There's some of that, but a lot of it is, it's just, everybody's kind of living together. So you get the neighborhood was kind of rough and tumble. And so when I was a kid and there were home invasions, or, the house next to me was the halfway house for the prison. Mm-hmm. The house across was this rental that was always just getting in trouble. So you'd be very scared as a young kid with all these situations that I had to go through. But then Bernalillo County Sheriff's Department would come, you would hear the sirens, mm-hmm. and you knew they were coming to wreck stuff. And so they would come in and everybody would start running, and the people that were shooting would stop shooting and try to get out of there.
Or start shooting at different things.
Right. I tried to get out. So the police came, and then after they came and they did all their stuff, I was able to go to sleep. Like, this scared 8-year-old kid, it was like they would come and the neighborhood would be dead quiet after they left. And so I'd get 3 or 4 out, and that feeling of relief. But then I have to remember that there were people who had the exact opposite experiences as I talked to them when the police came, right? Like they were, they shot their dad accidentally because he was the wrong color, or they would pull all their friends out or whatever. So like you have to then say, well, these people have had that powerful experience I had in reverse with the police, and that's why they're feeling that way. And so just understanding that, I think, is a super important element to being a future politician. And so I'm trying to understand that.
Yeah. Well, and man, I love like getting people to talk about that. Like, how does this affect you? Don't tell me what you think about the national politics. Like, okay, we have a homeless problem. What do you mean?
Right.
How have you tried to help? Like, what does that mean to you? Like, that's a really, fostering that conversation is something that people just aren't doing enough. Like people, it's just like the internet world, right? You don't want to be interrupted. You want to be able to put your little comment out and put it out there and be like, that's it. You don't want to have a conversation.
Right.
You want to read what this idiot said, say your own idiot thing. Then you're like, I've solved it.
Right. So for me, at least in my methodologies, I think I'm going to start with that. And so that's where I'm at.
Nice. Well, I can't wait to see where it goes. I'm super duper excited about it. We're going to bring it back to the whole Albuquerque and the PJ community thing. Like, you have given back so much to this community. And so, like, I know you laugh and you say you haven't, and I can see it on your face, but you really have. And that's why we wanted to get on there. And I know you've seen for a long time, like, where that PJ community is going, with a lot of the stuff. Like, how do you feel about just the pararescue community in general?
Well, first of all, like, pararescue guys to me are so damn cool. And I'll tell you why. Well, first of all, obviously, I mean, look at you two right off the bat.
He's an SR guy, but he does love PJs.
But
I have a thing. It's weird. Whatever.
So I think one of the things that I really enjoy about them is that their motto, right? Like, that is a very unique thing in the special operations world. Like, that your job is to go save people's butts. Like, that's really cool. For me, it's such a unique and a cool thing that you get these personality types that go into that field. And I think it's something special because everybody from, you got your tier 1 guys, your dev and your CAG and all these guys that are, and brilliant people, so smart. And then everybody below that is just great team, but you don't really have a dedicated unit to go and help the people that are helping the people, if that makes sense. So to me, that's one of the first things that brought me to it. I was like, what a unique career field, right? What a unique mission profile, and what a noble thing. Like, for me, it was the height of nobility. So that's what attracted me to it. But then the people in that follow that kind of, right? Like, 'cause you have personality types, and obviously you guys both know people that don't always fit the personality type, but
right,
you have personality, right? Like, it's, if you're a sniper kind of guy, you're a sniper kind of guy. There's people that can, do dogs and snipers and everything else. But most of the time you kind of settle into what you like to do. And so I think that there was such a uniqueness in that pararescue community that I admired, that really drew me to the people. And they've been nothing but sweet and kind and appreciative. I don't really do much, and they are still appreciative. So like, it's just, you know what it is? They're just good people.
Yeah.
You're good people, man.
Absolutely.
They're okay. I mean, there's also, you help people along their way to their goals of getting to the other side of this, the veil of life, that's helping people. So as we need to end, first I want to say thanks for coming on. I really appreciate it. And everything I've seen you do. I don't want to fanboy out here too much, but one of our final questions we always ask is, say you have a person out there that's thinking about trying to get into one of these career fields or communities that's almost an impossible task, right? Whether it's being a pararescue guy, SR, CCT, SEAL, MMA fighter. What's your piece of advice for someone that's out there thinking about getting into this kind of job?
Well, the best advice I can give you is stop thinking about it. Just do it. Like, stop. Well, I could do this and then maybe that. I don't know. Just stop. Go. Do it. Done. Like, it's like reading self-help books to get better at something. Like, no, just be better. I'm angry all the time. Stop being angry. Well, how do you do that? You're going to read 1,000 books and you're going to be right back in this position where it's the same thing with, go do it. Stop it. That's what we stop it. Stop having inner monologues with yourself. Stop weighing out the options and just go do it. And if it's for you, it'll present itself pretty damn quick. Like you'll be like, oh, this is not anything what I thought it was. I'm out. I'm going to go fly airplanes. But if it is for you and it clicks, because almost all the best operators I know, hardly any of them got in there thinking I'm going to be this amazing. And they just tried it out. They were some of the best were like artists. I know some great guys that were, I just painted and I wanted to get into the military. Mechanics. I know mechanics that were tier 1 guys that are legends now, you know what I mean? But they started out in aircraft maintenance. Yeah. Right. You know what I mean? Like, so just do it. Like you don't have to have this special thing where you're like, it's my whole life, bro. I'm going to,
you're not going to get an invitation, fellas.
Right. Exactly. Just go stop. The inner monologue drives me crazy. After you do like a first assessment, you've already done everything you need to do. Yeah. Like and not all women are like this, but a lot of women, they've already decided that they liked you or liked you by the second day. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like they've already figured you out. Like I'm nothing to do with this guy, or we'll see where it goes. And that once you're like, oh, maybe should I do it? Okay. I'll do an initial triage of all these things, the pros and cons, and then you're done. If you're like still questioning it, then go do it.
Love it. Absolute best way to end. We tell people that all the time. People are like, should I do this other thing? We're like, listen, if you want to be a PJ or an SR guy or a SEAL or a fighter or whatever it is that you want to be, you got to go. You just got to stop doing it. Put on your shoes and go run.
Today. Just stop the podcast. Go get it
That's
done.
It.
Don't wait another hour while you're going, maybe.
Fantastic. Well, man, that's an awesome place to end. I really appreciate you coming on from your work with the Deliver Fund. We're going to put deliverfund.org. We'll make sure that gets onto the YouTube and on the website. Everybody follow Coach Greg Jackson at Greg Jackson MMA. Is that the Instagram?
Something.
He doesn't even friend me back. I don't even think he runs.
Because I'm not on my.
It hurts.
I don't go on this social media. Not a thing.
We want to say thanks to everybody that keeps coming back to the team room to hearing it. Excuse me. Have a great day. We appreciate you listening to the podcast. Thanks again to Coach for coming on. Trent, any last words?
No, really appreciate it. Start now. It's going to be scary. Just do it, just like Coach said.
Let's go, baby. Regret is hell. Train hard, everybody. Have a good one.
Later.